poor, women, youth and farmers. These are the four broad categories that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is likely to focus on in her interim budget speech. What is the broad policy direction that the government is taking? What are some of the reforms on the anvil? What are some of the challenges for the Indian economy, which has always been called a bright spot in a volatile geopolitical environment? Joining us right now is Mr. Arvind Virmani, member of the Niti Aayog. Mr. Virmani, thank you very much for joining us. Recently, the government, the finance ministry specifically, came out with an economic policy review, not a survey, as this is an interim budget, where they said that we are well poised for a 7% or 7% plus growth rate. What, according to you, will be drivers of the Indian economy and the challenges?
So, for the general audience, I generally put it as three elements. One is the great opportunities which have opened up. The second is the threats, and the third is the weaknesses of the Indian economy, which we can turn into opportunities. So, very quickly taking these three elements, and these will then drive the 7% plus in growth. But it's not growth; I call it a fast, inclusive growth. We mustn't forget the inclusive. So what are these? So the great opportunities are basically, in simple terms, there's two. One is the demographic changes in the world which are going on, which is that India's share of working age population will rise, that of the developed countries, and even some of our potential competitors, which people mention, Thailand, Mexico, all of these will lose share in the working age population. So there is this great opportunity for India. That is one. The second is the geo-economic and geopolitical environment, which you are all familiar with, which you cover yourself, which is, in a way, the last opportunity for us to do manufacturing, production, exports, etc. That's fairly straightforward. So these two opportunities. What are the threats? Again, you're familiar, but I'll just state them. One is oil prices are always a problem for us. So when they go up, there's difficulties. When they go down, it's good. So to isolate ourselves from the problem, the solar initiatives. The defense items, again, we all know that what happened in 2020. So we can convert this into opportunity by Atmanirbhar defense production. Again, you're familiar with it, so I won't go into it. I should say for the opportunity means that we must grab it, which we are doing. We can go into the details, but the whole supply chain stuff, that opportunity for India. Right. Okay, that was the first one. So thirdly, the challenges, and again we can go into, I'll just mention it. The two basic weaknesses we have is the quality of education and skilling, and second is the women's participation. I think you have questions on women, so I'll leave that for the moment. Right. But the skilling is absolutely important, and that is one of the things which kind of comes under my broad ambit in a medium long-term sense. And really, there is a great opportunity of using digital methods, hybrid methods. Some of them are happening perhaps now or some other time we can talk about it. But it can be converted into a strength. And one sentence way to say that is skill for India, skill for the world. So it's not just an opportunity to promote jobs, skilled jobs, medium skilled jobs, low skilled jobs in India, but for the globe.
Right. Speaking about women, yes, there has been a lot of focus on women empowerment, reducing the gender gap. What can be done in order to bring the participation of women in the workforce closer to 50%? What roadmap do you think should be taken? Again, that's an area which, because employment, medium long term, my concern, short term, the ministries, etc., are dealing with all these things. But the research is now showing and drilling down into looking at these things. Let me give you a few items which will determine how we move forward. So one of the things we find is that highly educated women, unmarried women, this is a key thing which I have learned over the last year. The gap has virtually closed. So the gap between educated, unmarried women in India and males of the same category is as narrow as it is in the US. Take that US as a benchmark, because people think we are way behind. It turns out we are not. So the key problem, difficulty is with married women. Now again, one of the things which the research has shown is there is this kind of 20-minute rule that most married women generally who work don't want to go more than 20 minutes. There are many reasons. And the second aspect, of course, is married women are expected to take care of children and old people. So one, we won't go into all the detail, but one way to do it is to make it easy and possible for either at the home space or the office space for there to be creches. Okay, and similarly for older. The second way could be what we learned from internationally from all the Southeast Asian countries. If you make it possible for women, if you provide the transport, okay, if you set up housing for them in industrial areas, we're talking about supply chains, industry. So perhaps these companies which come in, they can for a group of villages, for example, provide transportation. So there are things one is thinking of, trying to see what can be done about it.
We're speaking about 4 groups, and the Prime Minister has focused on that, and they came out quite clearly in the President's speech as well. When it comes to budgets right before elections, there is often a case for populism that is made out. But looking at the trajectory of this government, do you expect them to stick to the fiscal prudence path?
Absolutely. Well, there's a kind of semi-political, but let me talk about, the glide path given by the 15th Finance Commission. I am pretty sure that they will stick to it. Of course, the new Finance Commission has been announced. The members, I think, were announced yesterday or today. I don't know what that commission will say, but as of now, what has been given by the 15th Finance Commission, I expect the government to stay on that path.
About private capex, there has been some concern about the deployment of private capex. How fast will that take place? How confident do you feel about the pace of the capex cycle right now?
So let me start with something which was really good about the last 2 budgets, which was the increase in capital expenditures at a much faster rate than GDP. It's important to understand that because that is an important reason why the actual numbers which we've seen for the 2 years are even beyond my expectation. I would not have expected, frankly, in this year, which we are still in, and the previous, of growth to be higher than 7%. Now, I think it's important to understand that there are studies done by, I can name the economists, solid economists, who showed that there is a very high multiplier for government expenditures. Now, the number I knew, it's actually 2.45. I remember it by memory. But frankly, I did not expect it to be so strong and immediate. So that is the reason why we are seeing, in my evaluation, why it's exceeded the forecast. Now, why is it important? Because the multiplier means things are happening. What is happening? So construction, which was what our idea was when we suggested raising the capital expenditure, me and others, of course. So what that is doing is you're already seeing investment picking up in the cement industry, the steel industry, the things which are connected with construction. And also you're getting employment generation, which was the second reason why we said that this should happen. So some of that connected to what is usually called crowding in, right, of investment. So that's happening. The second part is that what I think is delaying, I think they would the second is housing. Housing investment is picking up. There was a very sharp fall in direct investment in housing about 5 or 6 years ago, which I showed in a paper, is the main reason why people, this peak, everybody talks about the peak ratio and why we are so far below. That was the main cause. I analyzed it and I showed it in a paper. So that is already reversing. So this too. And the third one, as I started to say, is the global uncertainty. So many other industries, many other private sector is kind of waiting, and you keep getting these shocks. After the pandemic, we'd have Ukraine, we've had Israel war. So that any investment, that environment, because we are no longer isolated, so they have to look at the global market. Okay, and so one of the factors they would obviously look at is that China has excess capacity, and there may be a danger of dumping, and all these shocks which are occurring. So I think that is delaying partly, but the domestic factors, which are all positive, will eventually come through. I'm very hopeful that that will happen for the rest of the industries in the next year.
What tweaks do you think the PLI schemes need in order to actually generate investment in the economy?
The way I put it is that the original design of the PLI scheme was really to meet the gap between the scale of the Chinese industry and Indian industry. If you permit me, very simple economics for a minute for your listeners. You know, the microeconomics tells you that the average cost is declines with scale, but it's a two-faceted thing. One, it declines, then it flattens. So that turning point is called minimum efficient scale. So the idea was that Indian industry is too small. If we can get them up to that minimum efficient scale, then as far as this item is concerned, they can compete with Chinese industry. So the idea was good. This reasoning applies to electronics, telecom, ADP, and perhaps capital goods. But in other industries, you have to be very careful, you know. So the original idea was good. It is going to be affected in these things, but one has to review and be cautious about whether this design of PLI is really appropriate for other types of industries.
So you feel that maybe there are...
And some of that review has been done. I'm not saying that I'm suggesting for the first time. I mean, I have, you know, my views are known.
Maybe the model is not suited for all industries.
Yes, that is the point I'm making.
Right.
Yeah.
My final question would be, if there was one key reform which you feel that the Indian economy needs in order to maintain a sustained growth path, upwards of 7%, what would that be?
See, I picked this out not because it's the only one, because few people realize, because it's a macro. You know, I am the macro person. I have to give the key macro reform because everybody has some idea of the micro. So what people, you know, when we talk about tax reform, you and I who are salaried employees think of our rates. That is not the issue in macro reform. The issue is, how does the business person, you know, there is a corporate tax which corporates pay. The income tax applies to all business, okay? So how does taxation affect business? So my basic idea, which I keep trying to explain to everybody, is that we still need a lot of tax reform so that the ideal, people will understand. You know, Chanakya's term was, the taxation should be like the bee sucking honey from a flower, okay? I think it's possible. In the digital age, it is possible for us to design a system where we integrate the income tax, the GST, the corporate tax, so that when we take taxes from businesses particularly, it'll be like they won't even feel it. That will have tremendous benefits for them and for the economy.
So reducing the overall tax burden?
No, it is the ease of paying taxes. Like it can be made almost automatic. You don't even have to do anything. Everything will be, it's a digital age. There's UPI. It's all be possible to connect. For myself, for salaried employed like me, for last 2 years, I have not had to collect any information. It's all there. It's already seeded. Something similar for businesses. Okay? So that I think the worst, but best, but I want to mention the second one, which is a struggle. You know, about 30 years ago, I called this jungle of controls in 91. I was part of the 91 reforms. And I used to use the word jungle of controls, okay? That jungle, we've cleared a lot of it, but it's very hard. There's much work to be done. It doesn't just disappear, okay? And it's particularly now more at the state level, because more reforms have been done in this connection, connected to this at the central union level than at the state. So I would put these two as, from a macro perspective, the most important reforms.
Right. Thank you very much for speaking to us, Mr. Virmani, giving us your wish list of what you expect the government to do on a policy front in the next few months and the years to come. Thank you once again for being with us.
Thank you.